En ja, soos jy vroeër gehoor het, vandag is wêreld-hipertensie-dag, oftewel Hoë Bloeddruk-dag. En Dana Govender van die Heart and Stroke Foundation sluit nou by ons aan om ons bietjie meer te vertel, nie net oor die dag nie, maar ook oor hoë bloeddruk. En baie van ons sal weet dit word die stille moordenaar genoem. So, Dana, good morning and welcome to die groot ontbyt.
Good morning, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
The pleasure is all ours. And this is such an important conversation to have because, as I just alluded, it is known as the silent killer. So I want to start by asking you, what is the theme for World Hypertension Day and why is it so important?
Yes, World Hypertension Day was initiated in 2005 by the World Hypertension League, and since then it has focused on many things. And this year's theme, 2022, is measure your blood pressure correctly, control it, live longer. It is a simple message, Jennifer, to educate the public on the importance of getting a correct blood pressure reading and also understanding that it can be controlled, and also to know that how to achieve this. So it's important to know those. Knowing your blood pressure is very important because, you know, it's a mere, for the mere reason that high blood pressure is a very serious medical condition and is a preventable risk factor for cardiovascular disease, which includes heart and brain health, right? And what is also very important for this year's theme is we are focusing on the low to middle income countries, and that is a very, very crucial aspect of the theme for this year.
We'll get to that in a second, but I do want to ask you, you mentioned a part of the theme this year is measuring your blood pressure correctly. How do we get it wrong?
Well, you know, sometimes you've got to use the proper device, you know, a good accredited monitor, and you can get any one of these. Even a doctor can recommend a good device for you so that when you are testing your blood pressure, you get a correct reading. So the device is very important, and also how you measure your blood pressure. You know, you have to do it a couple times, maybe 3 times, and make sure that the person is relaxed and, you know, he's sitting correctly with his feet or her feet on the ground and not cross-legged. So all of that is very important to make sure that you are getting a correct reading.
Back to the basics. What is hypertension? And I always see these words, systolic blood pressure, or I normally see SBP, and diastolic blood pressure. What does this mean?
Very simply, hypertension is when the force of the blood flowing through the blood vessels is persistently high. And a blood pressure measurement is recorded as 2 numbers. You quite rightly mentioned systolic blood pressure, which is the upper reading or the upper value. And then you got the diastolic, which is the lower reading. And this is how blood pressure is measured with 2 values, the upper value and a bottom value. The SBP, as you mentioned, systolic blood pressure, indicates the pressure when the heart contracts, and therefore the pressure is always higher. And then the diastolic, the bottom blood pressure measurement, indicates when the pressure is calculated when the heart is relaxing between beats. So a blood pressure measurement is expressed as one figure, for example, 120/80, and high blood pressure is diagnosed when either or both of these values are persistently raised in more than one occasion or measured when measured at that time. And this can also lead, you know, you also need to make sure that you are testing your blood pressure a few times, as mentioned before. So you know that you got a correct reading.
That leads me to my next question. What is a correct reading, or what is the ideal blood pressure supposed to be?
Okay, we look at a normal blood pressure below 120/80 to 129/84. And then you also have a high normal, which is 130/85 to 139/89. It's very important when we go to the doctor to know what our readings are. Then you have hypertension also, you have mild, you have moderate, and you have severe. When it's mild, it's between 140 over 90, and it can go up to 159 over 99. And then you got a moderate reading, which is 160 over 110 to 179 over 109. That's a moderate reading. And then you got the very severe reading. This is when it's over 180 over 110. And uncontrolled blood pressure can lead to a heart attack, heart failure, stroke, kidney disease, as well as damage to the eyesight. You may have heard of glaucoma.
Yeah.
So this is another condition that can develop due to high blood pressure.
Jennifer, just listening to these numbers, I think is causing my blood pressure to rise. And that is because so many people die due to hypertension. So I'm just thinking of all the people dying. I think I read statistics, Dana, that I think it was about 128,000 people die every day worldwide due to hypertension.
Yes, absolutely. 13% of our population die globally due to high blood pressure, and yet it is a preventable risk factor for cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease.
Do you think it's just because we don't create enough awareness with regards to high blood pressure, that it's just something that's kind of in the back of our minds, kind of swept under the carpet, but it's not something that we're always aware of, or we don't create awareness? We create awareness for heart diseases, for cancers, but something like blood pressure, we don't create awareness.
That's so true, Jennifer, because, it's a silent killer. Many times we don't see any signs, no symptoms. And then, if you're not feeling safe, then you're not going to do anything about it. But I think if you're regularly checking your blood pressure, and then you can, when you are diagnosed with high blood pressure, and, you can make some lifestyle modification, also medication as well. So a doctor will let you know that whether you are hypertensive or not. So checking the blood pressure correctly is very important, and regularly as well. And especially when you have a family history as well, that's also a major concern that, you need to do it regularly.
Wel, dit is Dana Govender van die Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa. Ons gaan na die handelsflitse verder gesels. Wie weet, dit kan dalk jou lewe red. And Dana, during the news, we just heard this shocking statistics that the Western Cape Department of Health made available, saying that we had a 70% increase of people between the ages of 18 and 44 that has high blood pressure. I can almost not believe it. Just goes to show how important this conversation is today. Can you give our viewers a brief understanding of what types of hypertension exists as medical conditions?
Yes, it's very important to know the different types of hypertension. When you go to the doctor, then he will tell you exactly what type of hypertension. And it's important for us to understand. All right, we look at familial hypertension, and this is under-recognized by the general public. It's also called FH, and is a rare genetic form of hypertension caused by mutations in particular genes, many of which help to control balance of fluids and salts in the body, and this affects blood pressure. And this could be a hereditary condition. And then we have the pulmonary hypertension, which affects the heart and the lungs on the right side of the heart. And then you may have heard of gestational diabetes. This is a persistent elevated blood pressure that is present only in women who are pregnant. It might subside after delivery, and that's very important to make sure that, the women are making sure that they're going and checking their blood pressure regularly, etc. And then we have a condition called pre-eclampsia. And this is a very serious medical condition and occurs during pregnancy and is characterized by high blood pressure. So these are some of the different types of high blood pressure that we all should be aware of.
Dana, we hear of women getting high blood pressure during pregnancy, often as you just mentioned. What is there that women who are pregnant can do to help prevent high blood pressure?
Yes, important question, generally, because there's a lot of lifestyle modifications that we can do. For example, um, eating a diet in low sodium or salt, as we know that excess intake of salt can increase our blood pressure. And also physical activity can help, but I think always check with your doctor how much and the intensity of physical activity you can do. But the Heart Foundation recommends brisk walking, and that is a good way of incorporating exercise into your daily routine. Also, eating a healthy diet with lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, a lot of low grain foods. And one of the very important programs of the Heart and Stroke Foundation is our endorsement program. This is our Heartmark endorsement program. And this is a very easy way to choose healthier foods. And it's a guaranteed way to know that these items contain less salt, less sugar, less saturated fat, and high in fiber. So this is an important tool to help our public to make sure they're choosing healthy foods, and also to make sure that we are not eating a lot of processed foods because they have a lot of salt. So you need to be careful of that. And you know what? We all know that during pregnancy you shouldn't be smoking. All right, that's a no-go. That's not to be done. And also alcohol. We might also indulge in a glass of wine and so on, but that's not allowed as well. So these are some of the lifestyle modifications, and by adopting healthy lifestyles, we can make a difference in our blood pressure as well.
Now, this leads me to my next question, because I often wonder whether it might have something to do with culture, for instance, not having a culture of exercise, certain population groups, for instance, but also economic factor, because eating healthy, some people argue, is quite expensive. And sometimes, let's be honest, just eating pap and wors is so much cheaper than making a salad, especially if you're feeding a family of 5. Why is there a focus this year on low to middle income countries such as South Africa? Is it because of the economic factors, as I mentioned?
Yes, absolutely. That plays a huge role because, sometimes in our low middle income countries, nutritious food is not always available. Access to food is difficult. So you have that problem, and you also have malnutrition, and you have obesity. All right. So these are some of the conditions, because as you say, you eat what you have, and that is one of the major risk factors. And also, the focusing on middle income countries is an important aspect for this year's World Hypertension theme, because the consequences of hypertension in these countries lead to very poor health outcomes. In particular, making individuals more vulnerable to cardiac disease, heart and stroke disease, and other diseases as well. So I think what is very important that, we need to have interventions in terms of controlling high blood pressure in our countries.
When you say intervention, what do you mean with intervention? What kind of intervention can happen?
I think very important is making health facilities, healthcare accessible to communities, and also involving health authorities, civil organizations, non-government organizations like the Heart and Stroke Foundations, the general public, the healthcare professional, all of us to collaborate so that we are making a concerted effort to create awareness and also to educate and keep our public informed about high blood pressure.
Dana, I also saw statistics that says that a lot of people who are placed on medication for high blood pressure, after about 6 months or a year, they stop treatment. Why is that?
That is true generally, because if you look at high blood pressure, 1 in 3 are aware of the high blood pressure status. Only 8% of these people have the blood pressure controlled. So it has been projected that 3/4 of adults in the low-income countries will have high blood pressure by the year 2025. And what is important is 1 in 3 are aware of the high blood pressure status, and because they haven't controlled the blood pressure, that increases the prevalence in people having high blood pressure. And we must also remember in South Africa, more than 1 in 3 adults live with high blood pressure, and it is responsible for 1 in 2 every strokes and 2 in every 5 heart attacks.
Can I ask, it might be a strange question, and I would like to know, because earlier we spoke about how to test your blood pressure and how to do it correctly. And I suppose my question would be, how often should you test your blood pressure? Is it something where you'll feel certain symptoms and then you go, oh, wait, I need to test for high blood pressure? Or do you have to do it on a regular basis?
Yes, I think it's very important. We encourage everyone over the age of 45 to have their blood pressure tested. But I think more frequently when you have a family history, for example, mom and dad, grandparents had high blood pressure, so it's more likely the children will have high blood pressure as well. So the family history is very important. And if you look at our lifestyle, if we are not exercising regularly, if we are eating badly, lots of saturated foods, a lot of foods with excess salt, that shows that, we are putting us at risk. So again, lifestyle, you need to look at that. And then if we're not exercising, physical activity actually lowers blood pressure. So all of these risk factors, the modifiable risk factors, we call them, that we can control and we can reduce our blood pressure. So there's ways that we can, we as the population, and I think, health is an investment. That is why we, the Heart and Stroke Foundation, encourage everyone to test the blood pressure if they're over 45. But, more regularly, if we have all of these conditions, family history, genetics as well plays a huge role. And then ethnic groups, some groups are more prevalent to high blood pressure. So all of that is important and will help to reduce the prevalence of blood pressure in our communities.
Very important conversation we had today with Dana Govender from the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Very quickly, if people would like to get more information, where do they get it?
Thank you, Jenny. You can visit our website, www.heartfoundation.co.za. We also have a health chat line, and the number is 021 422 1586. And, your viewers can call us on the chat line and speak to any one of our professional staff on any of their cardiovascular concerns. And if they want to know a little bit more about blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, healthy living, healthy recipes, they can always call us. And they can have a private session with one of our professionals with regards to the cardiovascular concerns.
Thank you so much. That was Dana Govender. Baie dankie.